Women in First World War, stepping into the workforce. The telegram arrived on a Tuesday morning in 1915. Margaret's hands trembled as she read it. Her husband wasn't coming home from the Western Front. But here's what the British War Office didn't anticipate. Margaret wouldn't sit home and grieve. By Friday, she was wearing overalls and wielding a welding torch in a munitions factory, doing something no woman in her family had done in 1,000 years of recorded history. She was earning her own wage, and she wasn't alone. The day the men left, everything changed. When World War I erupted in 1914, European society operated on a premise as old as civilization itself. Men worked, women waited. The Industrial Revolution had already shifted labor from fields to factories, but the factory floor remained stubbornly male territory. Women of the working class might take jobs as domestic servants or seamstresses, but heavy industry, transportation, engineering, these were masculine domains, protected by union rules, social custom, and the firm belief that women's delicate constitutions couldn't handle real work. Then came August 1914, and the men disappeared. Not slowly, not gradually, but in a thunderous exodus that would eventually drain 65 million men into the meat grinder of modern warfare. In Britain alone, over 5 million men enlisted. In France, Germany, Russia, the story repeated itself. Entire villages emptied of working-age males in a matter of weeks. And here's the beautiful irony. The war machine couldn't run without workers, and suddenly, the workers were gone. Picture this: munitions factories standing silent, their assembly lines frozen. Coal mines with nobody to descend into the darkness. Buses and trams parked in depots because there were no drivers. Agricultural fields ready for harvest with no hands to reap them. The governments faced an impossible equation. They needed to manufacture more weapons, grow more food, and maintain more infrastructure than ever before, with half their workforce gone. The solution was standing right there, wearing long skirts and pinned-up hair, having been told for centuries they couldn't possibly do these jobs. What happened next was nothing short of revolutionary. In Britain, women's employment in industry increased by nearly 2 million during the war years. By 1918, women made up nearly 40% of workers in the metalwork and chemical industries, sectors that had employed virtually zero women in 1914. In France, women took over 700,000 jobs in munitions factories alone. Germany saw similar transformations. These weren't token positions or charity cases. These were the jobs building the tanks, forging the shells, and fueling the war machines of empires. But let me tell you about the munitionettes, because their story will shock you. These women handled TNT, picric acid, and other toxic chemicals daily. The work was dangerous beyond imagining. Explosions in munitions factories killed hundreds of women workers throughout the war. The 1917 Silvertown explosion in London killed 73 people and injured 400 more, many of them women. TNT exposure turned their skin yellow. They became known as canary girls, their faces literally jaundiced from the poison they handled to keep soldiers supplied with shells. And they did it knowingly. They understood the risks. They came anyway. Dorothy Lawrence, a young British woman, was so determined to serve that she disguised herself as a man and made it to the Western Front as a soldier before being discovered. When arrested, she was told her story must never be published. It might inspire other women to similar madness. The establishment feared women's courage more than they feared the enemy. Here's what the history books often skip. These women weren't just filling in temporarily. They were proving something, and they knew it. Every woman who drove a bus, every woman who operated a lathe, every woman who descended into a coal mine was smashing a supposedly natural law. The suffragette movement had been arguing for women's equality for decades, but arguments could be dismissed. Results couldn't. Flora Sandys, a British woman, joined the Serbian army and became the only British woman to officially serve as a soldier in WWI, rising to the rank of Sergeant Major. Ekaterina Teodoroiu became a Romanian combat officer. Princess Sofia Dulip Singh worked as a nurse and continued her pre-war suffragette activism, refusing to pay taxes. Marie Curie, already a Nobel laureate, developed mobile X-ray units, Petit's Curies, and drove them to the front lines herself, training operators and saving countless lives. The impact rippled beyond the factories. Women entered banking, civil service, and police forces. They became bus conductors, chimney sweeps, and farm laborers. In Britain, the Women's Land Army put 23,000 women to work in agriculture. They dug trenches for the war effort, paved roads, and unloaded cargo ships. And then came 1918, and the men started coming home. This is where the story gets complicated and, frankly, infuriating. The establishment expected women to simply retreat back into the domestic sphere, to return to being invisible. Many women were indeed pushed out of their jobs, sometimes forcibly, to make room for returning soldiers. Union pressure, social pressure, and direct termination sent hundreds of thousands of women back toward home. But something fundamental had broken. Or perhaps something fundamental had been revealed as a lie all along. Women had operated heavy machinery. They'd managed complex chemistry. They'd driven vehicles, made executive decisions, and handled national crises. The myth of female fragility lay in ruins alongside the empires the war had destroyed. The political earthquake followed swiftly. In 1918, Britain granted voting rights to women over 30 who met property qualifications, still not equal, but a crack in the dam. By 1928, British women achieved equal voting rights. The United States passed the 19th Amendment in 1920. Germany granted women's suffrage in 1918. Canada, Austria, Poland, dominoes falling across the map. Could these victories have happened without the war? Perhaps eventually. But World War I accelerated social change that might have taken generations. It provided incontrovertible evidence that women's supposed limitations were social constructs, not biological facts. The women who welded the steel, mixed the explosives, and drove the ambulances didn't just support a war effort. They demolished centuries of assumptions. They proved that civilization's gender divisions were choices, not inevitabilities. Margaret, the woman from our opening, never did remarry. She worked in that factory until she retired in 1943, during another world war that would call upon women's labor once more. Her daughter became an engineer, her granddaughter, a pilot. The real story of women in World War I isn't about women entering the workforce temporarily. It's about women kicking down a door that men had insisted must stay closed for the good of society itself, and once that door opened, it could never fully close again.